Hello friends, and welcome to Bedtime Stories with Lorelei. We are continuing our journey around the world through fairy tales and stopping at another land of my ancestry, Ireland. Tonight's tale comes from a book called Irish Fairy Tales, written by James Stephens in 1920. As most Irish tales go, it is ironically funny. It's a story about a 5th century abbot who learns of a man in his province who believes in gods that the abbot did not approve of. After a battle of wills, the abbot gained admission into the man's home to evangelize. But he found himself speaking to one of the old ones. And by that, I mean that Tuan Cairill was one of the original humans to inhabit Ireland. This is a very clever story that takes us through the history of Ireland through the eyes of a very interesting, shape-shifting Ulsterman. A story after my own heart, complete with the origins of people and lands. Be sure to subscribe to my channel so that you won't miss a night of this cultural and historical journey around the world through fairy tales. And please like this video if you enjoy it. If I can help even one fellow insomniac get a good night's sleep, it would bring me great joy. Feel free to let me know how you slept in the comments. Before we begin our fantastic tale, let's start with some relaxation exercises so that we can begin to settle down for a wonderfully relaxed and restorative night's sleep. Find a comfortable position, laying down, settling yourself in, getting yourself ready for a relaxing and restorative night's sleep after our story. Feeling safe and cozy, begin by closing your eyes and bringing awareness to your breath. Take a few deep breaths in and out, allowing your body to settle into a state of relaxation. Now, imagine a warm ball of light hovering just above the crown of your head. This ball of light is filled with a soothing warmth and healing energy. As you inhale, visualize the ball of light gently descending and moving slowly down to the top of your head. Begin to feel the warmth and the comfort radiating from the ball of light as it touches the crown of your head. With each exhale, allow the ball of light to expand and spread its warmth throughout your scalp. Feel any tension or tightness melting away as the light relaxes every muscle and fiber in your head. Now, imagine the ball of light moving down to your forehead. Feel it gently releasing any furrowed lines or wrinkles, smoothing out the muscles of your forehead. As the ball of light continues its journey, feel it moving down to your eyes and sense the warmth easing the strain from your eye muscles, allowing them to relax completely. Now, let the light travel down to your cheeks, jaw, and neck, and feel the tension melting away with each breath as the light warmly soothes and comforts these areas. Continue to breathe deeply as the ball of light moves down to your shoulders. Feel them becoming heavy and relaxed as the light penetrates deeply into the muscles, releasing any knots or tightness. Now, let the warm light flow down your arms, through your elbows, and down to your wrists, all the way to your fingertips. Feel a sense of ease and relaxation spreading through your entire upper body. As the ball of light moves to your chest and upper back, feel it gently expanding with each breath, filling you with a sense of calm and peace. Now, guide the light down to your abdomen, upper back, and hips. Feel any tension or discomfort melting away as the warm light envelops these areas. With each breath, allow the light to continue its journey down your legs, knees, all the way down through your ankles to your feet. Feel the warmth soothing every muscle and joint, leaving you feeling completely relaxed and at ease. Take a moment to bask in the warm glow of the light, allowing yourself to fully surrender to the sensation of relaxation. When you're ready, take a few deep breaths in and out. Gently wiggle your fingers and toes. Take a moment to check in with how you're feeling now. Hold on to this feeling of peace and relaxation. Remember the tranquility as a place you can come back to when you need a moment of peace in your day, and carry this feeling with you as we begin our journey to the land of Ire. Part 1. The Story of Tuan the Cairill. Finian, the abbot of Moville, went southwards and eastwards in great haste. News had come to him in Donegal that there were yet people in his own province who believed in gods that he did not approve of. And the gods that we do not approve of are treated scurvily, even by saintly men. he was told of a powerful gentleman who observed neither Saint's Day nor Sunday. A powerful person, said Finian. All that, was the reply. We shall try this person's power, said Finian. He is reputed to be a wise and hardy man, said his informant. We shall test his wisdom and his hardihood. He is, that gossip whispered. He is a magician. I will magician him, cried Finian angrily. Where does that man live? He was informed, and he proceeded to that direction without delay. In no great time, he came to the stronghold of the gentleman who followed ancient ways, and he demanded admittance in order that he might preach and prove the new God, and exorcise and terrify and banish even the memory of the old one. For to a God grown of old time is as ruthless as to a beggarman grown old. But the Ulster gentleman refused Finian admittance. He barricaded his house. He shuttered his windows. And in a gloom of indignation and protest, he continued the practices of 10,000 years, and would not hearken to Finian calling at his window, or to time knocking at his door. But of those adversaries, it was the first he redoubted. Finian loomed on him as a portent and a terror, but he had no fear of time. Indeed, he was the foster brother of time, and so disdainful of the bitter god that he did not even disdain him. He leaped over the scythe, he dodged under it, and the sole occasions on which time laughs is when he chances on Tuan, the son of Cairill, the son of Murdoch Redneck. Chapter 2. Now Finian could not abide that any person should resist both the gospel and himself, and he proceeded to force the stronghold by peaceful but powerful methods. He fasted on the gentleman, and he did to such a purpose that he was admitted to the house. For to an hospitable heart, that the idea of a stranger may expire on your doorstep from sheer famine cannot be tolerated. The gentleman, however, did not give in without a struggle. He thought that when Finian had grown sufficiently hungry, he would lift the siege and take himself off to some place where he might get food. But he did not know Finian. The great abbot sat down on a spot just beyond the door and composed himself to all that might follow from his action. He bent his gaze on the ground between his feet and entered into a meditation from which he would only be released by admission or death. The first day passed quietly. Often the gentleman would send a servitor to spy if that deserter of the gods was still before his door, and each time the servant replied that he was still there. He will be gone in the morning, said the hopeful master. On the morrow, the state of the siege continued, and through that day the servants were sent many times to observe through spy holes. Go, he would say, and find out if the worshipper of the new gods has taken himself away. But the servants returned each time with the same information. The new druid is still there, they said. All through that day, no one could leave the stronghold. and the enforced seclusion wrought on the minds of the servants, while the cessation of all work banded them together in small groups that whispered and discussed and disputed. When these groups would disperse to peep through the spy hole at the patent immobile figure seated before the door, wrapped in a meditation that was timeless and unconcerned, they took fright at the spectacle, and once or twice a woman screamed hysterically and was bundled away with the companion's hand clapped on her mouth, so that the ear of her master should not be affronted. "He has his own troubles," he said. "It is a combat of the gods that is taking place." So much for the women, but the men were also uneasy. They prowled up and down, tramping from the spy hole to the kitchen, and from the kitchen to the turreted roof, and from the roof they would look down on the motionless figure below, and speculate on many things, including the staunchness of the man, the qualities of their master, and even the possibility that the new gods might be as powerful as the old. From these peepings and discussions, they would return languid and discouraged. "If," said one irritable guard, "if we buzzed a spear at the persistent stranger, or if one slung at him with a jagged pebble." "What?" his master demanded, wrathfully. "Is a spear to be thrown at an unarmed stranger, and from this house?" And he soundly cuffed that indelicate servant. "Be at peace, all of you," he said, "for hunger has a whip, and he will drive the stranger away in the night." The household retired to wretched beds, but for the master of the house there was no sleep. He marched his halls all night, going often to the spy hole to see if that shadow was still sitting in the shade, and pacing thence, tormented, preoccupied, refusing even the nose of his favorite dog as it pressed lovingly into his closed palm. On the morrow he gave in. The great door was swung wide, and two of his servants carried Finian into the house, for the saint could no longer walk or stand upright by reason of the hunger and exposure to which he had submitted. But his frame was tough as the unconquerable spirit that dwelt within it, and in no long time he was ready for whatever might come of dispute or anathema. Being quite re-established, he undertook the conversation of the master of the house, and the siege he laid against that notable intelligence was long spoken of amongst those who are interested in such things. He had beaten the disease of mugging. He had beaten his own pupil, the great calm sill. He had beat Tuan also, and just as the latter's door had opened to the persistent stranger, so his heart opened, and Finian marched there to do the will of God and his own will. Chapter 3. One day, they were talking together about the majesty of God and his love, and although Tuan had now received much instruction on this subject, he yet needed more, and he laid as close a siege on Finian as Finian had before. laid siege on him. But man works outwardly and inwardly. After rest, he has energy. After energy, he needs repose. So, when we have given instruction for a time, we need instruction, and we must receive it, or the spirit faints and wisdom herself grows bitter. Therefore, Finian said, "Tell me now about yourself, dear heart." But Tuan was avid of information about the true God. No, he said. The past has nothing more of interest for me, and I do not wish anything to come between my soul and its instruction. Continue to teach me, dear friend and saintly father. I will do that, Finian replied, but I must first meditate deeply on you, and must know you well. Tell me your past, my beloved, for a man is his past, and is to be known by it. But Tuan pleaded, "Let the past be content with itself, for man needs forgetfulness as well as memory." "My son," said Finian, "all that has ever been done has been done for the glory of God, and to confess our good and evil deeds is part of instruction, for the soul must recall its acts and abide by them, or renounce them by confession and penitence. Tell me your genealogy first, and by what descent you occupy these lands and strongholds, and then I will examine your acts and your conscience." Tuan replied obediently, "I am known as Tuan, son of Cairill, son of Murdoch Redneck, and these are the hereditary lands of my father." The saint nodded. "I am not as well acquainted with Ulster genealogies as I should be, yet I know something of them. I am by blood a Leinster man," he continued. "Mine is a long pedigree," Tuan murmured. Finian received that information with respect and interest. "I also," he said, "have an honorable record." His host continued, "I am indeed Tuan, the son of Starn, the son of Sarah, who was brother to Partholon." "But," said Finian in bewilderment, "there is an error here, for you have recited 2 different genealogies." "Different genealogies indeed," replied Tuan thoughtfully, "but they are my genealogies." "I do not understand this," Finian declared roundly. "I am now known as Tuan MacCarroll," the other replied. "But in the days of old, I was known as Tuan MacStarn MacSarah, the brother of Partholon." The saint gasped. "That is my pedigree," Tuan said. "But," Finian objected in bewilderment, "Partholon came to Ireland not long after the flood." "I came with him," said Tuan mildly. The saint pushed his chair back hastily and sat staring at his host, and as he stared, the blood grew chill in his veins, and his hair crept along his scalp and stood on end. Chapter 4. But Finian was not one who remained long in bewilderment. He thought on the might of God, and he became that might and was tranquil. He was one who loved God and Ireland, and to the person who could instruct him in the great themes, he gave all the interest of his mind and the sympathy of his heart. "It is a wonder, you tell me, my beloved," he said. "And now you must tell me more." "What must I tell?" asked Tuan resignedly. "Tell me of the beginning of time in Ireland, and of the bearing of Partholon, the son of Noah's son." "I have almost forgotten him," said Tuan. "A greatly bearded, greatly shouldered man he was, a man of sweet deeds and sweet ways." "Continue, my love," said Finian. "He came to Ireland in a ship. 24 men and 24 women came with him. But before that time, no man had come to Ireland, and in the western parts of the world, no human being lived or moved. As we drew on Ireland from the sea, the country seemed like an unending forest, far as the eye could reach, and in whatever direction there were trees, and from these there came the unceasing singing of birds. Over all that land the sun shone warm and beautiful, so that to our sea-weary eyes, our wind-tormented ears, it seemed as if we were driving on paradise. We landed, and we heard the rumble of water going gloomily through the darkness of the forest. Following the water, we came to a glade where the sun shone, and where the earth was warmed, and where Partholon rested with his 24 couples, and made a city and a livelihood. There were fish in the rivers of Ire, and there were animals in her coverts, wild and shy and monstrous creatures ranged in her plains and forests, creatures that one could see through and walk through. Long we lived in ease, and we saw new animals grow, and the bear, the wolf, the badger, the deer, and the boar. Partholon's people increased until, from 24 couples, there came 5,000 people who lived in amity and contentment, although they had no wits. "They had no wits," Finian commented. "They had no need of wits," Juan said. "I have heard that the firstborn were mindless," said Finian. "Continue your story, my beloved." "Then, sudden as a rising wind, between one night and a morning, there came a sickness that bloated the stomach and purpled the skin. And on the 7th day, all of the race of Partholon were dead, save one man only." "There always escapes one man," said Finian thoughtfully. "And I am that man," his companion affirmed. Tuan shaded his brow with his hand, and he remembered backwards, through incredible ages, to the beginning of the world and the first days of Ire. And Finian, with his blood again running chill and his scalp crawling uneasily, stared backwards with him. Chapter 5. "Tell on, my love," Finian murmured. "I was alone," said Tuan. "I was so alone that my own shadow frightened me. I was so alone that the sound of a bird in flight, or the creaking of a dew-drenched bough, whipped me to cover as a rabbit is scared to his burrow. The creatures of the forest scented me, and I knew I was alone. They stole with silken pad behind my back and snarled when I faced them. The long gray wolves with hanging tongues and staring eyes chased me to my cleft rock. There was no creature so weak but it might hunt me. There was no creature so timid but it might outface me. And so I lived for 2 tens of years and 2 years, until I knew all that a beast surmises and had forgotten all that a man had known. I could pad as gently as any. I could run as tirelessly. I could be invisible and patient as a wild cat crouching among leaves. I could smell danger in my sleep and leap at it with wakeful claws. I could bark and growl and clash with my teeth and tear with them. "Tell on, my beloved," said Finian. "You shall rest in God, dear heart." At the end of that time, said Tuan, Nemid, the son of Agnaman, came to Ireland with a fleet of 34 barks, and in each bark there were 34 couples of people. "I have heard it," said Finian. "My heart leapt for joy when I saw the great fleet rounding the land, and I followed them along scarped cliffs, leaping from rock to rock like a wild goat, while the ships tacked and swung, seeking harbor. There I stood to drink at a pool, and I saw myself in the chill water. I saw that I was hairy and tufty and bristled as a savage boar, that I was lean as a striped bush, that I was grayer than a badger, withered and wrinkled like an empty sack, naked as a fish, wretched as a starving crow in winter. And on my fingers and toes there were great curving claws, so that I looked nothing that was known, like nothing that was animal or divine. And I sat by the pool weeping my loneliness and wildness in my stern old age, and I could do no more than cry and lament between the earth and the sky, while the beasts that tracked me listened from behind the trees or crouched amongst the bushes to stare at me from their drowsy covert. A storm arose, and when I looked again from my tall cliff, I saw that great fleet rolling in as a giant's hand. At times, they were pitched against the sky and staggered aloft, spinning gustily, there like wind-blown leaves. Then they were hurled from these dizzy tops to the flat, moaning gulf, to the glassy, inky horror that swirled and whirled between 10 waves. At times, a wave leaped howling under a ship, and with a buffet dashed it into the air and chased it upwards with a thunderstroke on stroke, and followed again, close as a chasing wolf, trying with hammer on hammering to beat in the wide wound bottom and suck out the frightened lives through one black gape. A wave fell on a ship and sunk it down with a thrust, stern as though a whole sky had tumbled at it. And the bark did not cease to go down until it crashed and sank in the sand at the bottom of the sea. The night came, and with it 1,000 darknesses fell from the screeching sky. Not a rounded eye, creature of the night, might pierce an inch of that multiplied gloom. Not a creature dared creep or stand, for a great wind strode the world, lashing its league-long whips in cracks of thunder, and singing to itself, now in a worldwide yell, now in an ear-dizzying hum and buzz, or with a long snarl and whine, it hovered over the world, searching for life to destroy. And at times, from the moaning and yelping blackness of the sea, there came a sound, thin drawn as from millions of miles away, distinct as though uttered in the ear like a whisper of confidence. And I knew that a drowning man was calling on his God as he thrashed and was battered into silence, and that a blue-lipped woman was calling on her man as her hair whipped round her brows, and she whirled about like a top. Around me, the trees were dragged from the earth with dying groans. They leaped into the air and flew like birds. Great waves whizzed from the sea, spinning across the cliffs and hurtling to the earth in monstrous clots of foam. The very rocks came trundling and sliding and grinding among the trees. And in that rage and in the horror of blackness, I fell asleep, or I was beaten into slumber. Chapter 6. There I dreamed, and I saw myself changing into a stag in dream. And I felt in dream the beating of a new heart within me. And in dream I arched my neck and braced my powerful limbs. I awoke from the dream, and I was that which I had dreamed. I stood a while, stamping upon a rock, with my bristling head swung high, breathing through wide nostrils all the savor of the world. For I had come marvelously from the decrepitude to strength. I had writhed from the bonds of age and was young again. I smelled the turf and knew for the first time how sweet that smelled. And like lightning, my moving nose sniffed all things to my heart and separated them into knowledge. Long I stood there, ringing my iron hoof on stone, and learning all things through my nose. Each breeze that came from the right hand or the left brought me a tale. A wind carried me the tang of wolf, and against that smell I stared and stamped. And on a wind there came the scent of my own kind. And at that I belled. Oh, loud and clear and sweet was the voice of the great stag. With what ease my lovely note went lilting. With what joy I heard the answering call. With what delight I bounded, bounded, light as a bird's plume, powerful as a storm, untiring as the sea. Here now was ease in 10-yard springs, with a swinging head, with the rise and fall of a swallow, with the curve and flow and urge of an otter of the sea. What a tingle dwelt about my heart. What a thrill spun to the lofty points of my antlers. How the world was new. How the sun was new. How the wind caressed me. With unswerving forehead and steady eye, I met all that came. The old lone wolf leapt sideways, snarling, and slunk away. The lumbering bear swung his head of hesitations and thought again. He trotted his small red eye away with him to a nearby brake. The stags of my race fled from my rocky forehead, or were pushed back and back until their legs broke under them, and I trampled them to death. I was the beloved, the well-known, the leader of the herds of Ireland, and at times I came back from my boundings about Ayr, for the strings of my heart were drawn to Ulster, and standing away, my wide nose took the air, while I knew with joy, with terror, that men were blown on the wind. A proud head hung to the turf then, and the tears of memory rolled from a large bright eye. At times I drew near, delicately, standing among thick leaves or crouched in long-grown grasses, and I stared and mourned as I looked on men, for Nemid and 4 couples had been saved from that fierce storm, and I saw them increase and multiply until 4,000 couples lived and laughed and were riotous in the sun. For the people of Nemid had small minds but great activity. They were savage fighters and hunters. But one time I came, drawn by that intolerable anguish of memory, and all of these people were gone. The place that knew them was silent. In the land where they had moved, there was nothing of them but their bones that glinted in the sun. Old age came on me there. Among these bones, weariness crept into my limbs. My head grew heavy, my eyes dim, my knees jerked and trembled, and there the wolves dared chase me. I went again to the cave that had been my home when I was an old man. One day, I stole from the cave to snatch a mouthful of grass, for I was closely besieged by wolves. They made their rush, and I barely escaped from them. They sat beyond the cave, staring at me. I knew their tongue. I knew all they said to each other, and all that they said to me. But there was yet a thud left in my forehead, a deadly trample in my hoof. They did not dare come to the cave. "Tomorrow," they said, "we will tear out your throat and gnaw on your living haunch." Chapter 7. Then my soul rose to the height of doom, and I intended all that might happen to me and agreed to it. "Tomorrow," I said, "I will go out among ye, and I will die." And at that the wolves howled joyfully, hungrily, impatiently. I slept, and I saw myself changing into a boar in my dream, and I felt in dream the beating of a new heart within me, and in dream I stretched my powerful neck and braced my eager limbs. I awoke from my dream, and I was that which I had dreamed. The night wore away, the darkness lifted, the day came, and from without the cave, the wolves called to me, "Come out, O skinny stag, come out and die." And I, with joyful heart, thrust a black bristle through the hole of the cave. And when they saw that wriggling snout, those curving tusks, that red, fierce eye, the wolves fled yelping, tumbling over each other, frantic with terror. And I behind them, a wildcat for leaping, a giant for strength, a devil for ferocity, a madness and gladness of lusty, unsparing life, a killer, a champion, a boar who could not be defied. I took the lordship of the boars of Ireland. Wherever I looked among the tribes, I saw love and obedience. Whenever I appeared amongst the strangers, they fled away, and the wolves feared me then, and the great grim bear went bounding on heavy paws. I charged him at the head of my troop and rolled him over and over. But it is not easy to kill the bear, so deeply is his life packed under that stinking pelt. He picked himself up and ran, and was knocked down, and ran again blindly, butting into trees and stones. Not a claw did the big bear flash, not a tooth did he show, as he ran whimpering like a baby, or as he stood with my nose rammed against his mouth, snarling up his nostrils. I challenged all that moved, all creatures but one, for men had again come to Ireland. Simeon, the son of Stariath, with his people, from whom the men of Dominan and the Fearbog and the Galuin are descended. These I did not chase, and when they chased me, I fled. Often I would go, drawn by my memoried heart, to look at them as they moved among their fields, and I spoke to my mind in bitterness. When the people of Partholon were gathered in council, my voice was heard. It was sweet to all who heard it, and the words I spoke were wise. The eyes of women brightened and softened when they looked at me. They loved to hear him when he sang who now wanders in the forest with a tusky herd. Chapter 8. Old age again overtook me. Weariness stole into my limbs, and anguish dozed into my mind. I went to my Ulster cave and dreamed my dream, and I changed into a hawk. I left the ground. The sweet air was my kingdom, and my bright eye stared on 100 miles. I soared, I swooped, I hung motionless as a living stone over the abyss. I lived in joy and slept in peace, and had my fill of the sweetness of life. During that time, Beothach, the son of Arbanel the prophet, came to Ireland with his people, and there was a great battle between his men and the children of Simeon. Long I hung over that combat, seeing every spear that hurtled, every stone that whizzed from a sling, every sword that flashed up and down, and the endless glittering of shields. And at the end I saw that the victory was with Arbanel, and from his people the Tuade and the Ande came. Although their origin is forgotten and learned people, because of their excellent wisdom and intelligence, say that they came from heaven. These are the people of Fairy. All these are the gods. For long, long years, I was a hawk. I knew every hill and stream, every field and glen of Ireland. I knew the shape of cliffs and coasts, and how all places looked under the sun or moon. And I was still a hawk when the sons of Mill drove the Tuatha De Danann under the ground and held Ireland against arms or wizardry. And this was the coming of men and the beginning of genealogies. Then I grew old, and in my Ulster cave, close to the sea, I dreamed my dream, and in it I became a salmon. The green tides of ocean rose over me in my dream, so that I drowned in the sea and did not die, for I awoke in deep waters, and I was that which I dreamed. I had been a man, a stag, a boar, a bird, and now I was a fish. In all my changes, I had joy and fullness of life. But in the water, joy lay deeper. Life pulsed deeper. For on land or air, there is always something excessive and hindering, as arms that swing at the sides of a man, and to which the mind must remember. The stag has legs to be tucked away for sleep and untucked for movement, and the bird has wings that must be folded and pecked and cared for. But the fish has but one piece, from his nose to his tail. He is complete, single, and unencumbered. He turns in one turn and goes up and down and round in one sole movement. How I flew through the soft element. How I joyed in the country where there is no harshness, in the element which upholds and gives way, which caresses and lets go, and will not let you fall. For man may stumble in a furrow, the stag tumble from a cliff, the hawk, wing-weary and beaten, with darkness around him and the storm behind, may dash his brains against a tree. But the home of the salmon is his delight, and the sea guards all of her creatures. Chapter 9. I became the king of the salmon, and with my multitudes I ranged on the tides of the world. Green and purple distances were under me, green and gold, were the sunlit regions above. In these latitudes, I moved through a world of amber, myself, amber and gold. In those others, in a sparkle of lucent blue, I curved, lit like a living jewel. And in these again, through dusks of ebony, all mazed with silver, I shot and shone the wonder of the sea. I saw the monsters of the outermost ocean go heaving by, and the long, lithe brutes that are toothed to the tails below, where gloom dipped down on gloom, vast, livid tangles that coiled and uncoiled and lapsed down steeps and hells of the sea where even the salmon could not go. I knew the sea. I knew the secret caves where ocean roars to ocean, the floods that are icy cold, from which the nose of a salmon leaps back at a sting, and the warm streams in which we rocked and dozed and were carried forward without motion. I swam on the outermost rim of the great world, where nothing was but the sea and the sky and the salmon, where even the wind was silent and the water was clear as clean gray rock. And then, far away in the sea, I remembered Ulster, and there came on me in an instant uncontrollable anguish to be there. I turned, and through days and nights I swam tirelessly, jubilantly, with terror waking within me, too, in a whisper throughout my being that I must reach Ireland or die. I fought my way to Ulster from the sea. Ah, how that end of the journey was hard. A sickness was racking in every one of my bones, a languor and weariness creeping through my every fiber and muscle. The waves held me back and held me back. The soft waters seemed to have grown hard. It was as though I were urging through a rock as I strained towards Ulster from the sea. So tired I was, I could have loosed my frame and been swept away. I could have slept and been drifted and wafted away, swinging on gray-green billows that had been turned from the land and were heaving and mounting and surging to the far blue water. Only the unconquerable heart of the salmon could brave that end of toil. The sound of the rivers of Ireland racing down to the sea came to me in the last numb effort. The love of Ireland bore me up. The gods of the rivers trod to me in the white curled breakers, so that I left the sea at long, long last, and I lay in sweet water in the curve of a crannied rock, exhausted, 3 parts dead, triumphant. Chapter 10. Delight and strength came to me again, and now I explored all the inland ways, the great lakes of Ireland, and all her swift brown rivers. What a joy to lie under an inch of water, basking in the sun, or beneath a shady ledge, to watch the small creatures that speed like lightning on the rippling top. I saw the dragonflies, flash and dart and turn with a poise, with a speed that no longer winged thing knows. I saw the hawk hover and stare and swoop. He fell like a falling stone, but he could not catch the king of the salmon. I saw the cold-eyed cat stretching along the bow level with the water, eager to hook and lift the creatures of the river. And I saw men. They saw me also. They came to know me and to look for me. They lay in wait at the river and the waterfalls up which I leaped like a silver flash. They held out nets for me. They hid traps under the leaves. They made cords of the color of the water, of the color of the weeds. But this salmon had a nose that knew how a weed felt and how a string. They drifted me, a sightless string, but I knew of the hook. They thrust spears at me, and they threw lances which they drew back again with a cord. Many a wound I got from men, many a sorrowful scar. Every beast pursued me in the waters along the banks. The barking, black-skinned otter came after me in lust and gust and swirl. The wildcat fished for me. The hawk and the steep-winged, spear-beaked birds dived down on me. And men crept on me with nets the width of the river, so that I got no rest. My life became a ceaseless scurry and wound and escape, a burden and anguish of watchfulness. And then I was caught. Chapter 11. The fisherman of Cairill, the king of Ulster, took me in his net. That was a happy man when he saw me. He shouted for joy when he saw the great salmon in his net. I was still in the water as he hauled delicately. I was still in the water as he pulled me to the bank. My nose touched air and spun from it as from fire, and I dived with all my might against the bottom of the net, holding yet to the water, loving it, mad with terror that I must quit that loveliness. But the net held me, and I came up. "Be quiet, king of the river," said the fisherman. "Give in to the doom," said he. I was in air, and it was as though I were in fire. The air pressed on me like I was in a fiery mountain. It beat on my scales and scorched them. It rushed down my throat and scalded me. It weighed on me and squeezed me, so that my eyes felt as though they must burst from my head as though it would leap from my body, and my body as though it would swell and expand and fly in 1,000 pieces. The light blinded me. The heat tormented me. The dry air made me shrivel and gasp, and as he lay on the grass, the great salmon whirled his desperate nose once more to the river and leapt, even under the mountain of air. He could leap upwards, but not forwards, and yet he leapt, for in each rise he could see the twinkling waves, the rippling and curling waters. "Be at ease, O king," said the fisherman. "Be at rest, my beloved. Let go the stream. Let the oozy marge be forgotten, and the sandy bed where the shades dance all in green and gloom, and the brown flood sings along. And as he carried me to the palace, he sang a song of the river, and a song of doom, and a song in praise of the King of the waters. When the king's wife saw me, she desired me. I was put over a fire and roasted, and she ate me. And when time passed, she gave birth to me, and I was her son, and the son of Cairill the king. I remember warmth and darkness and movement and unseen sounds. All that happened, I remember. From the time I was on the gridiron, from the time I was born, I forget nothing of these things. And now, said Finian, you will be born again, for I shall baptize you into the family of the living God. So far the story of Tuan, the son of Cairill. No man knows if he died in those distant ages when Finian was abbot of Moville, or if he still keeps his fort in Ulster, watching all things and remembering them for the glory of God and the honor of Ireland. That's the end of tonight's story, but not the end of this wonderful book. We'll come back to these Irish fairy tales some other time. We'll continue with our quest for fairy tales around the world with another country next time. But for now, it's time to give your mind some time off, to tune out and to turn inward to oneself. Now is the time to process all of the day's information so that your mind can put everything in its place so that you can work smarter and faster on the morrow. May you wake with the answers to puzzling life's problems. May you see yourself successfully overcoming all of life's obstacles so that it is a simple matter of acting out your solutions in your waking life. When you wake, may you feel completely refreshed and rejuvenated after having a wonderfully restful and restorative night's sleep. May every day, in every way, be better, better, and better. May you have sweet sleep, and may God bless you, beloved. Good night.